Hey everybody, today we're going to be creating this Pokemon app from scratch. Whenever you click new Pokemon, it gives a first generation Pokemon with its name, type, and pictures. So let's get started. You're going to need your favorite text editor, and go ahead and create yourself a new folder. And then inside the folder, we're going to need index.html. You're going to need a CSS file, style.css. And I guess I should put code in front of that, code. And app.js. So you're going to need HTML, CSS, and a JavaScript file. Go ahead and get yourself your boilerplate for your HTML up. And inside of that, we'll just call it Pokemon app. And I'm going to put an H1 tag down here with Pokemon in it, just to have it and make sure it works. And to do that, let's go ahead and exit out of this, or I'm going to exit out of this so that we can open our app, or the part of our app we're working on right now, right? So there it is. This is what we have currently, and we should have something to compare it to, I guess. Well, no, we're good. So I'm going to just copy and paste this into this browser. There we go. Pokemon. HTML works. We want to make sure everything else works. So for now, I'm just going to give a color of blue to it. Okay, and it doesn't work yet because we have not linked the CSS. So link our CSS sheet, and then now it turns blue. I'm using the live extension for Visual Studio Code, so when I save in the editor, it automatically refreshes over here. If you're not using that, you can just save and then refresh, or Control S over here and Control R over here to refresh. Okay, now we need to hook up our JavaScript script tag, app.js. And so we know the CSS is connected. Now let's make sure the JavaScript is connected. Console.log hi. This will save us a lot of problems later. And let's check the console. Also, as you saw there, Control-Shift-I is the shortcut. Okay, and hi. So everything's connected. Everything is working. Okay, and now we can get rid of this H1. Bring it back in just a second. So let's create a different H1 with a class of main. Sorry, not main. With a class of name. Hello. h1.name. And in Visual Studio Code, h1.name tab it'll create that for you, save you some time. And for now, I'm gonna just put random Pokemon's name in there. Let's go with Charmander. You can pick whichever one you'd like for now. And then a type. So Charmander's type is fire, and I just gave that a class of type and a paragraph tag. And Charmander's blue. We don't want that anymore, so get rid of that in the CSS. And let's wrap all that in a container tag, and you can use a section tag or a semantic tag, and you probably should. I'm going to use a div tag just for simplicity right now, and I'm labeling it main container, and I'm going to put the name and type inside of the div tag. This one needs to go forward, back, save. Alright, so we have the main container. Now this text is not centered. We want to get that text centered. So dot main container, which is our div tag, text align center. I think that'll start well. Yep. And then we'll worry about the size of the text later, I think. So in the original we also had an image gallery, so let's go ahead and get an image gallery going. Div. Now I'm still inside of this main container, and I'm going to call this one dot. Actually, let's call this a section. Let's be semantic about it. Section dot image gallery, and inside of there I'm going to need the original. Let's go back to the original actually and just make sure the right stuff going. Okay, so we'll get back to that home screen in a second, the initial screen that occurs. So image gallery, and there it is. We have a front looking view, back view, shiny, and then the shiny, you can't see the other part of the shiny. I'm gonna extend the screen a little bit so you can see, hopefully. Nope, it moved the screen. Okay, well, I moved the screen. Hopefully you can see what's going on. Here we go. I'm gonna move it up just a little bit. Hopefully that's helpful and it centers the screen a little bit more for you. So we have basically what we have is 4 images here. So we need 4 places, 4 images in our section. So if I do img and I do ×4, it should give me 4 image, yeah. And it gives me 4 image tabs. Source and alt we're gonna leave blank for now because the source depends on what we get from the API. We're gonna be using an API for this. So but we should give each one a class. So, and we can do that all at once if you click push alt and hold it and then click in each space you want to type. You can do it all at once. Class equals image. Okay, now they all have the class of image, but for this case we're not they're each just going to need their own individual image class. So image, we could call it 1, image 2, image 3, image 4, and save. So that's pretty much it for the HTML layout. We're going to need the button, so we can create the button in a second. You'll notice the images don't appear here yet because they're empty, they're blank. There's nothing to appear right now. The button is we're gonna put that outside of the main container for now. So let's go with button dot, give it a class of button, button.button, and it said new Pokemon is what the button says. So save, and there's our button. It's not centered or anything yet, but the button is there. If we put it inside of the main container, I believe it would center the button for us, but I think we're gonna center our own button here in just a minute. All right, that's it for the HTML layout. Let's go ahead and look at the CSS. We're not going to do all the CSS right now, but we will do a majority of it. I like to try and do some of it before we move on. You'll notice before we go to the JavaScript, in our original app here, the Pokemon's name is capitalized, and it's not in what we have. So if we go to our CSS file, and it is .name was the class of the Charmander or whatever Pokemon you chose. Text transform uppercase. So I know you can. There's a way to uppercase or whatever it is in JavaScript that you can use to change the text to uppercase, but we can do it in CSS. So there it is. Text transform uppercase will just take whatever's in that name class and make it uppercase. And we're gonna we'll make the text size larger later, but for now let's also do the paragraph tag, or .type was its class, and let's make the text larger for now. We're not gonna make it the size that I have it in the original because it'll be too big, but for now let's do font size like 20 pixels just to make it a little bit bigger. And let's do a little bit with the button. Actually, let's comment out the button for now. So in the HTML, I'm just going to comment out the button for now. We'll come back to the button. Save, and the button's gone. And I said we'd be using an API for this. This is about the point where we're going to need the API. So if you go and open a new tab, and a new Google tab, and you Google Pokemon API, we're going to be using the first API that comes up. So go ahead and click it, Poke API, and let's see, you have to figure out how to use it, right? That's the thing with any API, you got to kind of learn and know how it works. So So down here, we're going to use the most original thing, and then the clearest thing, and then we're going to use the console to figure out everything else about the API, and I'll show you what that means in just a second. So this is our way to get a Pokemon, and I read the docs a little bit. You can take the time, read the docs on your own, but doing this will get you a Pokemon with a lot of information about that Pokemon. You can also put in its, I want to say it's from Bulbapedia, it's index, so 1 through 151, right? There's 151 original Pokemon. I believe Charmander is number 4, because it's Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, Venusaur, and then Charmander is number 4. So we're going to need this, and we're going to need to set that up in our app.js. So we can get rid of console.log. We're over in app.js. And we're going to have a new XML HTTP request to get the data from this Poke API. So I'm going to do let xhr, which is short for XML HTTP request, equal new XML HTTP request, and parentheses, and put the semicolon. Save. That doesn't do anything yet. We've created it. And then let's do xhr.open, and we want to get information from the API. So this is going to be get, G-E-T, capitals, oops, G-E, come on, caps lock, get, there we go, in capitals. Then we're going to need the URL. So the URL for the API is going to be this. You can copy, paste, or type it in yourself. https://pokeapi.co/api/version2, and I'm just going to paste it in there. We'll put parentheses around it in a second. /Pokemon /Charmander, or whatever Pokemon you chose, and then a slash on the end. We need to wrap this in parentheses. And then the last thing you need is this call going to be asynchronous? And just go ahead and put true for now. And a semicolon. So we have xhr.open, get request, the API with Charmander, and true. Okay? Now on load, so when we, let's go down here, xhr.onload, because it's not going to back that up, save. If I go back to our app, it's not going to do anything yet. We're still, this is saying, hey, this is what we want to do. And then we're going to need, we're going to actually need to run the request with xhr.send, xhr.send, parentheses, but we need to tell JavaScript what we're going to do with the information when we get it. So xhr.onload, and that takes a function, not a function, a function. Pardon my typo. Perhaps not in equals. There we go. Function, parentheses. And we're going to console.log, and actually we can't do that. We need to parse the information, because when we get the information from the Poke API, okay, if we, I'm gonna right click on this, if it'll let me. Okay, so we're gonna end up with all of this information over here on the right, and that's a lot of information. We need to parse it into JSON is the first thing we need to do. So let Poke data equal JSON dot parse xhr dot response text, and that's going to take all the stuff it gets from this URL, all the stuff it sends, and it's going to parse it into JSON for us. Not JSON. It's going to parse it into a JavaScript, we'll say object if you will for now. And then we can console.log the Poke data. So JSON.parse parses the data from that we get back from the GET request, and then we're going to log the data to the console. Now if we click save on this, come over to our app, you'll notice in the console we magically got this gigantic object of data. And this is all the data we're going to need, and really we're not going to have to look up anything else on the API. All the data we need will be right here in the console. You can sort through this for about 5-10 minutes. Abilities, it gives you a lot of things. Forms, it tells you what games they can be found in, the Pokemon. It tells you all the moves from all the various versions. It's very, very intricate. Weight, you got species. We'll come back to that because we're going to need the name. This is where we're going to get the pictures from, sprites, and it gives you its base stats, a ton of info for Charmander, a lot of information. Now I'm going to come back over to the JavaScript here. Instead of Charmander in this URL, I can put 4 because that's its index. Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, Venusaur, and then Charmander's the 4th. So if I save, I should still get Charmander down here. Yeah, name Charmander. And if I were to do 3, let's just test it. In the JavaScript, I should get Venusaur? Yeah, name Venusaur. And 1 should be Bulbasaur, right? So 1, save. And just for kicks, 151 should give us Mew? Mew, yeah, okay. Mew is the last one. So I'm going to go back to 4 because we want Charmander. There it is, Charmander. And now I'm going to go to our index.html and I'm going to get rid of the word Charmander and rid of the word fire, because now we're going to insert the HTML dynamically. So now we have nothing on our page, but we have this gigantic object in our console. We're going to use that to our advantage here in just a second. So let's see. Let's take, we're going to need a connection to the browser. Not a connection to the browser. Kind of. I said it a little weird. We're going to need to get this information from the console to the browser is what we need to do. So we can leave that console.log for now. I'm going to add a function below. So on load, we're going to call a different function, which we haven't made, but we're going to in just a second. Loaded Pokedata. And this function is going to take in this gigantic object here into here. It's going to be the parameter for loaded. And then loaded is going to do some stuff with that data. So let's go underneath .send and create a function that we just made called loaded. Function loaded. Hello. There we go. Loaded. That takes in the Pokedata. Now this function is going to be large. You could do a bunch of smaller functions, which probably should, but for this demonstration, we're going to do loaded in all one function. This was my opportunity to learn APIs, and if it's your first time learning APIs, it's a little easier, I think, to keep the API stuff to a minimum and just understand kind of the flow of how to get this information from the Poke API. So in loaded, when on load, we're going to run this function called loaded that takes in all this data from the console. And we're going to need to, let's see, we're going to need to select the name tag, and we're going to need to put Charmander, right? Because we have right now it's on 4 into loaded dynamically into the name tag right here. So we can't put Charmander here because we don't. The JavaScript won't be able to just. We'll see in a second. The JavaScript won't be able. The JavaScript will be able to change it, but the HTML just can't change itself. So in here we're going to need to do let name. Let's call this name so we know. Just this is a comment / name. Let name equal document dot query selector dot name. And if you're using query selector, you have to put, if it's a ID, hash name, if it's a class, dot name. If you're using get element by tag name or by ID, get element by ID, then you don't. But if you're using query selector, you need that dot before name. And let's make sure we got it. So console.log name, and that's going to bring up the name tag in our HTML. There it is. Okay, so we have that, and we want to insert some things into that name tag. So name.inner HTML equals, and how are we going to find what Pokemon that got the Pokemon Charmander's name? Let's come over here to the console, click down, and we can already see, if you scroll through the data, species, name, Charmander. So how do we get there? We want the whole object, PokeData, dot. Okay, so PokeData is this whole gigantic object, and then dot species. I believe if you come down here and hover over name, yeah, it says species dot name. PokeData dot species dot name. And that should bring up Charmander in the browser, and it does. And if we were to change this 4 to a 3, of course would bring up Venusaur, and it loads that dynamically. Or if we want Mew, 151, save, Mew. So now we're getting information from the API, and I'm just doing Control S for save. If you refresh this, it will come up also, or Control R on the browser. We have the name. Now we need the type. So very similar, in a very similar way, / type. Let type equal document. Hello. Document dot query selector dot type. And we're going to make sure that works. Console.log type. And there's our paragraph with the class of type. Now same deal applies. Type dot inner HTML equals PokeData, and we're gonna have to find the type. So to go into this block of information we got from the API. Not there. I think it would be under type. Let's see. I don't know if I can remember where we got it from. We'll just have to look. Stats? Nope. Type. Did I just miss it? There it is. So it's under types and 0, and then it's there, and it's the fire type, right? Charmander's a fire Pokemon, so we have to get that into the HTML. And if I hover over type there, it's showing types, brackets, quote, double quotes on both sides, dot type. But for me, I didn't need to do that. I just needed one, and actually I did this in 3 steps. So before type.inner HTML, let's add an intermediate step. Let type name equal PokeData dot types, and is PokeData dot types. And you see there's 2 sets of quotes there. I didn't need 2 sets of quotes. It worked for me with 1. Let me know what works for you. Quote 0 dot type. And that's a little confusing. Dot, because we need the name of the type. Dot name. So let's go through this. PokeData, that's the object. Oops. Oh Lord. There we go. PokeData dot types. There's types. The 0 index dot type, which is here, dot name. So again, it's PokeData dot types, the 0 index dot type dot name should give us fire. So we got the HTML tag, we got the type fire, and now we're going to insert the type fire into the HTML. PokeData dot type name, and I can do type name because I stored all this crazy stuff inside of type name, and that should show us fire undefined. Okay, it does not show us fire in the browser. Pokedata.type name. Oh, we don't need Pokedata.type name because we've already established that we went through everything and stored it in type name. So if we just do type name, it should work. Save. Yeah, fire. Okay. And now in the original, you're going to see it's type, whatever the type is, and then Pokemon. And we can do that with template literals. If you do backticks, I'm going to get rid of that for a second. Pokemon. And then $ brackets type name. Maybe it wasn't Pokemon here. Probably type, right? Type. And then type name is fire. Pokemon. Is that capitalized? No. So type colon type name Pokemon. Type colon $ brackets type name Pokemon. And if we save, type fire Pokemon. Perfect. And let's check it for Mew. So 151. Save. Type psychic Pokemon. So it dynamically gives whatever the API spits back for the Pokemon's type, right? So that's kind of neat. Let's go back to 4 for now. Charmander, type, fire Pokemon. Great. All right, so we have name, type, and now in the original we have the images. We need these images, the normal and the shiny. So we have to get those from the data that we parse from the API. So here we go. Images. And we're going to need to select each image from the HTML, right? So if we go back, remember our classes were image 1, 2, 3, and 4. So images, document, dot query selector, dot image, dot, and in this case we want to change the source of the image, right? So dot source, src, and equals. And the thing is, we're going to need to change this for each one. So I'm going to copy. We're going to need 4 images, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And image, we call this image 1, image 2, image 3, and image 4. Now if we save that, it won't do anything yet because we didn't say what we're going to store inside of the image HTML tag. So we have to find that data in this object. We have to find the images, and I believe it is under sprites. And yeah, so it's under sprites, and back default, back female, back shiny, front, blah blah blah. Okay, and in this app we have the front normal, back normal, front shiny, back shiny. You can arrange the images however you'd like. You can include just the shiny, just the normal. It's up to you. That's the beautiful part about creating building apps together. You can make it anything you want, add your own twist. I encourage you, especially at the end of this, to add your own features to this app and take it up another step, right? Make something that is all yours out of it. So I'm gonna stick with what I did. By all means, you can insert these in any order you'd like. So front default will give us the original. So I need to copy and paste this data somehow. If I widen the console, yeah, there we go. So front default, I'm going to copy all of the data, and including the quotes, actually, save me time. Control C is copy, Control V is paste, and put a semicolon on the end. Now if I save this, unexpected token, let's see, interesting. Oh, okay, so don't be me, don't do what I just did. You cannot just copy the image from the object, paste it there, and expect it to load it into the source. It isn't going to work like that, and definitely not what we'd want. So don't do that, okay? Just seeing if you're paying attention. What we want to do, excuse me, I may have to comment these out actually for a second to get the correct image. So let's see. All right. We're in sprites and we wanted front default. So instead of copying and pasting this image, the image URL, we need to do what we've done for the name and type. So sprites.front_default is how we're going to get there. So let's uncomment just the first image. And we always start with PokeData because we got to get it out of all this data. PokeData.sprites, it said. Dot, not two dots there, let's see. Front default. Dot front default. Okay. Now if I save, boom, we got the first picture of Charmander. Good. Now let's do it for the next. My guess is the other one's called back default. So without looking, PokeData.sprites.back default. All right, now we have the front and back. And what were the shinies called? Now we're moving. Front shiny, back shiny. Okay. Oops, let's uncomment both of these and do them at once. PokeData.sprites.front shiny and PokeData.sprites.back shiny. Save. And now we have all four images, and if I move this console a little bit, you can see they're kind of flexible. They'll line up however they fit into the browser, which is really nice for us. Works out well. Alright, so there's the original. There's what we have. We're getting pretty close, I think we could use with some styling now before we continue. And then we'll worry about the background and the button and that home screen. So let's go to styling. And let's start with the name. Also, we included, and I'll copy and paste this down in the, I'll have this down in the description box below. We included a Google Fonts in this. So I'm going to copy it. And you can't see that right now, but I'll show you in just a second. Okay, now you can. I'm going to put it above the CSS. No, I'm going to put it below the CSS sheet. And paste it in there. You can either take the time here and type this out, this link right here. You can type this link out, or you can find it in the description box below, or at least you'll be able to find this part, the href link, so you don't have to type that in, and you can copy and paste it into your thing. And that's going to change the look of this and this, because the original Pokemon games were 8-bit. I'm not exactly sure. I think they were 8-bit. Whatever it was, they were very pixelated, and we want to have that pixelated feel on the name and type, kind of to give you that nostalgia of the game. So Pokemon, referring to Pokemon like Yellow, Pokemon Blue, Pokemon Red. If you're from my generation, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, go look it up. Go look up Pokemon Yellow, Blue, and Red. You will not be disappointed. Those were the very good, the originals. Good stuff. So we want to change the style of the text. And I believe we can do that from, where did I do that? Just from the body, because all text in the body can be that. So we're going to make a body tag, and this just selects literally the body tag. I'm just going to show you here and then get rid of it. Body. It selects that body tag. And we're just going to do the font family. And this is from Google. This is the Google thing, the Google font family that I brought in. If you want to choose your own Google font family, by the way, google.com. If I type in Google fonts, if you want to choose your own Google fonts, by all means, you do not have to use the pixelated one. Go pick your own font. It's pretty awesome. If you click, this one has barcodes. You can click plus, and if you take a look, it gives you the link to copy and paste into your style sheet, which is pretty neat. So you can go explore that, try out your own Google font. I'm just gonna give you what I have for now, and you're more than welcome to use this, but you don't have to. VT323, and then monospace if that font's not available. And I actually changed, it's called letter spacing. And what that does, it just adds a little bit of space between each of the letters. And before I say that, I'm going to go back and so you can see the difference. Right here, it adds a little bit of spacing between each of the letters. So like a little couple pixels between P and O, O and K, K and E, etc. So if I save that, and that looks like a lot of space, but okay, so this defaulted to monospace actually, I believe, because that's not the pixelated thing I'm seeing over here. And that's okay, right? That's why you have the default. I'm not quite sure why it did the default like that, but that's okay, that's why we have it. So maybe if I put this above the CSS, I don't know if that makes a difference or not, I have no idea. Okay, it does. So put your, if you were over here in the HTML with me, put your Google font above your CSS style sheet, and that will make a difference. That will get the correct font that you want. And that looks a little funky, but it'll look fine in just a second. We're going to change the, still in the CSS, change the font size and all that. So name font size 70 pixels, and that got gigantic, but it works, and it'll look better in just a minute. Okay. And type font size, I know it's a paragraph, but it doesn't matter, we can change it we can change it with CSS. Okay, and there it is, type fire Pokemon. So that works out. Now the spacing doesn't look quite as bad, and let's also make the pictures bigger. The pictures are definitely not large enough. Actually, I believe, yeah, okay, so to make the pictures bigger, I didn't do that through CSS. You can, it's up to you. I did it through the HTML, and I just did it between class and source. I'm gonna use the Alt, hold down Alt, and type all four at once. Width, equals 200 pixels. Save, and the images get a little bigger. I chose to not go bigger than this because it seems to distort the images a little bit if you go bigger than that. Now we're looking a lot closer to original app. This Charmander is just down here, not up on that line, because the screen's not quite big enough. If I were to close the console, it would go up to the first line. And that's a design thing. You can choose how you want to do that exactly. All right, so we have everything set up. We have, and this is all dynamic, right? So name, the type here, and the images all dynamically loaded. Just want to make that really clear that if we go back here and do like 151, it'll bring up Mew and all of Mew's pictures, which is just really sweet. Let's try a random one. Let's try like 10. All right, we get Caterpie, bug Pokemon, and we get all the Caterpie pictures. Pretty sweet. Now, the thing is, it's supposed to bring up a random Pokemon every time that we click the button. We don't have the button yet, but we can certainly go ahead and randomize the Pokemon that appears every single time. So to do that, to randomize the Pokemon, we're going to come up here, and we're going to put a lot of stuff right where this 4 goes. And I'm actually going to write it outside of the 4 first, and then put it in place of that 4. So to do that, I'm going to just say console.log, just to kind of understand where it's coming from. Excuse me. We're going to need math.random, is we want a random number, between 1 and 151, random number. So math.random, if we just console.log math.random, let's go back here and save. You're going to see that we're going to get up right here a new number each time between 0 and 1, and it's just completely random. It's got a lot of decimal points on it, which isn't what we want, but we're getting in the right direction. We're heading in the right direction. So math.random times 151, now save, and we're going to get a random number every single time, I believe between 0 and 150 point blank 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 blank. It might be 150.9, 150, but you could also get like 0.0001. So we're getting closer. Again, just a random number between 0 and 150. Now we need between 1 and 151, not 0 and 150. So to do that, we're going to wrap that whole thing, math.random times 151, in math.ceil. We're going to actually round it up. So parentheses. So we're going to take between 0 and 150, right? It's actually, like, if it picks a random number, it might be 0.001. And it doesn't matter if that would originally round down to 1. If you use math.round, it would. We're using math.ceil, so no matter what it is, it's going to round up to the nearest integer, the nearest whole number in our case. So it's just going to immediately round up. Doesn't matter if it's 0.1 or 0.9, it will round up to 1. And then everything that's 150 point whatever it is, 150.1, 150.9, will round up to 151. So everything will round up, and we'll get a random number between 1 and 151 every time. So if I save that, over here, oops, not that, not save there. I want to save over here. So as I'm clicking save in the code editor, you can click refresh and it'll do the same thing, or save, either one. And I'm just getting a random number every single time in the console between 0 and 151. Now that's great, but we want a new Pokemon every single time, a new random Pokemon. So we need to take all that we just did. Let's get rid of the console first, just to not confuse ourselves. Rid of the extra parenthesis. Math.ceil, math.random times 151. We're going to take all that, cut it, Control X, or right click and cut. And where that 4 is in the Poke API, we're going to paste that. So, and now that's still not going to work, but we're in the right direction. We pasted it. The problem is here, we're in this, we have a string going on, and it's part of the string. It doesn't know that that's a math operation. So I'm actually going to get rid of this string quote for a backtick. So get rid of your string quotes and put backticks. And then we're going to wrap math.ceil, the math.ceil, math.random times 151 with the $ brackets. Oops, I just pushed something. There we go. And we have to close the brackets over here. And now it should know that this is some math to do. When you use template literals with the backticks, and then whenever you wrap something in brackets in the $, it knows that either that's a variable or, hey, I need to do some math here. So it should do some math, and whatever that number is between 0 and 151, put it right between these two slashes in the URL when it gets the URL from the API. So we should be getting a random random Pokemon, a random index for the Pokemon every time, and this should now change every time we save and refresh. So let's try it. Machop, Krabby, Sandshrew, Poliwhirl. And sometimes you're going to notice that a Pokemon might not be, and Farfetch'd is flying, but sometimes Pokemons have 2 types, and it's only going to give us the first type that's listed here in the, see, Farfetch'd is, it says it's flying, but it also says Farfetch'd is normal. And you could argue Farfetch'd is just normal, but in this case it tells us Farfetch'd is normal and flying. Remember, we're only getting the 0 slot here, so we're only getting the flying part. If you want to, you can figure out how to add also getting the types 1, so you can get flying common normal Pokemon, or in some Pokemon's cases like Vileplume, I think, or Gloom, it's like grass comma poison, or poison comma grass. So if you see a Pokemon that's like that might be its secondary type, you can figure out how to go in there and change that. I just opted for the first type that's available to make it a little bit easier on us for starting with APIs. For me personally, this is my first API project, so I wanted to kind of make it easier on myself. If you have experience with APIs, by all means go in there and you can add all kinds of data to this, almost make it a Pokedex. All right, so Vulpix is fun, so we'll leave it on Vulpix here, and good. So again, this math up here is what gives us the random Pokemon in the URL, gives us the random Pokemon every single time. It just does all that math and then sticks and replaces all that math with a number between these two slashes, like 4 or 7 or whatever Vulpix is, and then whatever Vulpix's index is, and it then calls or gets the URL from the API. Okay, so now we're getting a random Pokemon, name, type, and images every single time. All we have left is the background and the button. Let's start with, let's do the background first. The button's a little easier. The background is a little bit tedious, but worth it. And I believe there's a better way to refactor this background, but for really clarity for myself, this is the way I did it. So bear with me. Here we go. It's a gigantic switch statement. Let's see. We're still in loaded Pokedata function, by the way. Every time it's going to do all this stuff. Again, there's probably a better way to do this, but for now, this is the way I'm doing it. Background changes. And by all means, please refactor this to make it simpler and look better in your code. Switch statement, and I'm going to take in type name, because the type name is this right here. In this case, it's fire. In Charmander's case, was fire. Blastoise is going to be water. Squirtle, water. Wartortle, water. What's another? Seal, ice. Pikachu, electric Pokemon. Raichu, electric. It's going to change every time. So we want to take in the type name, whatever that is, whatever comes out of type name, whether it's fire, electric, grass, poison, whatever it is. And we're going to make a case for each one. And I believe I've gotten most of the cases here. There may be a couple I'm missing, and you'll find that out if your background doesn't change or does something weird. But I believe I got all the cases. So here we go. Case, fire. If the background type name, or excuse me, if the type name is fire, then we want to do document.body.style.background equals red. Okay, and if I save it here, and I just wait for a fire Pokemon to come up, now our background's red on fire. Perfect. And I personally, I like the text to be white when the background's red. You can keep the text black or change it to any color you want, right? But document.body.style.color equals white. And I found that I have to specify, and if we get back to a fire Pokemon, let's see if we can. Yeah, okay. Missed it because I pushing too fast here. There we go. Ninetales type fire, and the text is white. Now, again, you can change that to any color you like. Totally up to you. Break, and you have to add a break after each one. I found that the break is necessary. Also, what else I found is I have to declare the exact background color I want and the text color for each one, because if I don't, then sometimes I'll end up with a black background with black text, or a white background with white text, or an off-white background with white text, and you can't see the text. So you have to be I found I had to be pretty specific for each one. If you find a better way to do this, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to be able to refactor this a little nicer. So next case, water. Now let's just go ahead and get this coded out. Document. And what I can do, and what you can do to save time, is if you copy and paste these two lines, save us a lot of time. And you just have to hit tab. Water Pokemon, blue background, white text. Perfect. And then we need to break after it. So break. We could copy actually the whole thing, right? So I can do copy, paste. And that looks funny, but we can fix that. All right, that's easy enough. That's an easy fix. So case, electric, yellow, text black. Whoa, okay, not what I wanted. Enter, paste, there we go. Case, steel. I don't think steel was part of the original generation, but this API specifically does include those types with the first generation for some reason, so have to do it. If it, because I think Magnemite comes up steel, so you have to include that. Silver and black. Next. Rock, gray, and black. You could pick white or black for that, or any colors you want, right? You don't have to pick the colors I'm choosing. Grass. Course background green. And again, you can pick any colors you want for these. Ice. Oops. And I tried not to go, I did pick some hex colors, but I tried not to go too crazy with the colors that I picked. Just because it's no fun to try and type in every single color like that on a video, or it's just no fun to try and do that in your own coding. So in this case, the colors seem to look pretty good. They're very bold, but that's okay. Oops, I don't know why I did that, right? We were copying and pasting. Forgot about that. Make sure you spell psychic right. I actually relearned how to spell psychic there. If you don't spell it right, the API spells it one way, and if you spell it wrong, as I found out, it doesn't work, right? So make sure you spell psychic correctly. Not that you can't, obviously you can, I just struggled. Poison. Alright, so for this one I did use a hex color. I did use a couple hex colors in this. So you can copy and paste. If you really like this color when you see it for poison, by all means go ahead and copy and paste it from here. It's just a, not copy and paste it, you're gonna have to type it out. It's just a darker purple, that's all it is. Alright, and for some reason I did start getting into hex colors the further down I got, just because I ran out of basic colors. So oops. Hello, now I gotta recopy that. There we go. Flying. Okay, and again, this is a hex color. I went with black background. I think that's like a really light blue is that hex color. And again, I'm gonna have to recopy. Next is bug type, and that's another hex color. By all means, you don't have to do all these hex colors, just add whatever colors you think looks good, right? This is a style thing, be you. That's the coolest thing about, I think, about programming is you can just, you can be you. You can create whatever you want to. You can say, hey, this tutorial is neat, but I want to do all these things different, add all these other things. Please do that, you know, be you, create awesome stuff. That's the best part, in my opinion, about programming is you can just create amazing things, you know, get some pull from different places and then create your own awesome thing. Awesome app, I guess is the correct word. All right, dragon Pokemon. I'm sure there's a way to do this dynamically. Also, if you're sitting there thinking, wow, there's a better, easier way to do this, please do let me know in the comments below. That would be very beneficial to myself and I think to other people watching. So fighting, I just went with brown. We are almost done, by the way. Three or four more. Normal. And this is actually, there's a color called wheat. We went with wheat background. Calls. Oh wait, I can just copy paste. What am I doing? There we go. Ground. Okay, this is a hex color. I believe this is like a really dark brown, but again, pick whatever color you think looks good, right? Almost done. Two more. Case here is fairy. And we went with pink and black. And then I had a default down in case I missed anything, and I think this is the way to go. I don't believe I missed any types, but if I did, please, drop a comment for other folks so they don't miss the types. But this is the catch-all, so if you did miss a type, that's what the default is for, right? This is, I think, in my opinion, at least if nothing else, this is a beautiful case of a switch statement and kind of how the default is able to catch anything that's missed. And I'm going to copy and paste this in again. So if it's saying if you missed a type and it doesn't know what to do, the switch statement doesn't know what to do, go ahead and make the background white. Oh no, yeah, make the background white and make the text color black. So if you missed a type, make the background white, text color black. Now that is a gigantic switch statement. There it is, switch type name, and we included every single possible case we could think of for Pokemon types. And then if we save it and refresh the page, okay, Ponyta, we're gonna get the background color and text color that corresponds with the type. So there's wheat. Oops, not save. No. Okay. I need to save and refresh over here. There we go. Okay. There's the pink background for fairy. Dark, or no, that's just purple background for psychic. Normal's the wheat background. That's that hex color background, like a dark green on bug. Okay, that's that bluish purple on poison. By all means, pick. I think that would look better actually now that I'm thinking about it, in like a darker, really dark purple. But pick whatever colors you like. It said Bulbasaur's poison there because again, it's poison grass, so it picks whatever's the first type that it has in its data, the API has in its data. Okay, we'll leave it on mute for a second. We're not quite done, right? Because we need the button. So when you click the button, then it changes the Pokemon. Right now we're just saving and refreshing. The user has no way to change Pokemon unless they just sit here and click and refresh the page, which is perfectly fine, but I think the button will look a little better. So let's go back to the index.html. And now I uncommented the button, save. And there's our beautiful button to go with our app. You cannot click on it yet, but it will be beautiful and will work in just a minute. So let's go over to our style.css. Do you want to style it first? Yeah, let's style it first. So, and then we'll make the functionality work. This has a class of, okay, and this gets a little bit hairy here, but here we go. Also, notice that in the original app, let's talk about this. When you refresh the page initially, it comes up with a background picture and the button. It doesn't immediately have a Pokemon. So we need an initial background for the body. So let's do that. The URL for this, I'll paste the link for this again in the description below. I'll put it under background URL. I'm gonna copy paste it, and by all means, if you don't want to copy paste it from the description, you can just type it in too. That's fine. It is a long link though. Background URL, and it's this link. I'll leave that up for a second. So if you want to pause the video, oops, sorry. If you want to pause the video, there we go. You can type in that link. If not, you can find it in the description box below and copy paste it. Okay, so now when I have the initial, when I save that and I refresh, okay, it doesn't work yet, but it will. Hang in there. You see it like flashing, and we'll get there. We're getting there. Also, on that background image, we want two things. We want background repeat. No, it seems redundant to do this, but background repeat, no repeat. You'd think it would just be none. Background size 100%. Alright, save that. And it's still not working yet, but we'll get there. Let's style our button. We will come back to that background. Remind me of that. If that doesn't work, we'll come back to that in just a minute. So dot button. So we need to style our button, and we give it a class of button. Problems. Do not use empty rule sets. Background URL. Huh. I'm gonna comment out the body picture for now and see if that saves it. Oh no, it's just because button's an empty rule set, right? It's pointing to line 9. Okay, we'll get there. So I'll come back to the background picture. Button. This is the button. We want to line it up, make it look nice. Font size 30 pixels. Save. Already looking better. Let's do width 250 pixels. I want it to stay the same size no matter if it's on a phone or a desktop. That's fine. So I'm going with pixels. Height, I went with 110. Again, play around with width and height and all that, and do what works best for you. You can also pick any background picture you want. This is just the stuff that I chose, but please make it yours. Make it unique. Be awesome. I'm gonna leave width and height together. I know some people do these in alphabetical order, which is fine, but just kind of grouping it. Margin top 50 pixels. And that just gives a little room between the pictures and the button. Cursor, pointer, oops, save. Now when we hover over it, the cursor becomes a pointer, right? Looks a little nicer. And then, all right, so let's keep styling the button, and then we'll do the image. Background, no, not background, because we're gonna come back to that. Border radius. Again, border radius is kind of how much you want the curves on your corners to be apparent. If you do 50%, it'll be a circle, right? If you do like 100 pixels, I think that makes it a circle too. I did 20 pixels. I like those rounded edges, but I didn't want a circle this time. I just kind of wanted a smoother looking button. And if you want no border on it, you can do border, I think it's border none, and it'll take away the border. Personally, I like this one with a border. Usually I don't, but in this case I do. Again, totally personal preference there. Color, and I did yellow for the text color in the button, and it's gonna look a little weird on the gray background, but it'll get better in a minute. Font weight, again, all this is totally optional for styling the button. Bold, and it just makes the text a little bit easier to read, I think. And it'll be easier to read once we get the background picture in too. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and add the background image. To do that, this is another URL. You can either, I tell you what, I'll post the description for this URL also in the background, in the description box below. I'm getting a little tongue-tied, sorry. Okay, so background image. Gonna put this up top. Again, you can type it in from here, or you can copy it from and paste it from the description box below. And when I save that, you sort of get something, but it's not the image we want yet, right? Also, this button's not centered, so let's go back. Let's try putting this button inside of the main container and see if that centers it for us. Alright, it does center it for us, but then our background image doesn't work, which is a little confusing if you ask me. Alright, so maybe there's a reason that I did not put it in the main container. So let's get it out of there. I'm going to put it back where I found it. It lost its styling abilities. Maybe because if it's in the main container, it takes the CSS might be different, or the cascading of it. I don't know. But we're going to leave it outside of the main container div for now. Alright, we have the button, we have the URL. Background size, and this is just what I found worked for me. By all means, do what works for you with this background image. Okay, now it's up. Now it looks a little better, but it's still not quite what it is in the original. And then I just played around with these till it worked for me. Background position. I'm sure if you're a designer out there and you're thinking, what the heck's he doing? I believe that. By all means, this is just my hack way, if you will, of making the picture fit nicely inside of the button. And there we go. Background position 0 pixels, -40 pixels seemed to work, and it got the picture kind of centered where I wanted it in the button. If there is a better way and you're a designer, please drop that comment in the description, so that myself and everybody else watching can definitely learn, and it's a lot easier to do that next time, because that's just a lot of guess and check. I'm sure there's a more scientific way to do that. Alright, so that's good. Now we want to get that button centered. I don't know how I did that. Let me think. No, the button is inside the main container. It's just not inside the image gallery. I think I stuck it inside the image gallery last time. Okay, so let's put the button back inside the main container. Now when I click save, it's gonna, okay, it's still styled. Good, excellent. There it is. So the button's inside the main container, but not inside the image gallery, right? Perfect. Now it still doesn't get that light effect when you hover over it. In the original app, it gives that light effect. It goes light, so we want that. And to do that, what I did was I went to an online image editor, and I cranked up the brightness of the same picture, and then I used on hover, used the brighter version of the picture. So let's do that. So we're gonna need button hover. Let's back that up, clean that up. Dot button, oops, hover, that's why we're doing it, but dot button hover. And all I did was change the background image. And I'm gonna copy paste it again. This is one of those that I will put in the description below. The light background image for the button, I'll label it light button image. And you can either, I'll put it here for a second. So if you'd like, you can type that in, type this in right here. I'll leave it there for a second. If not, copy paste it from the description below. But that is the background image URL that will hopefully make this lighter in just a second. So let's save. Just clean that up. Save. Hover. There it is. Okay, so now, excuse me, when you hover, the background image turns to the lighter version of the image, and it gives that nice light up effect on the button. Now, also one more thing I didn't like is when I click the button, it has this border, and it just doesn't look very professional to me. It's like, how could you do all this and then forget that border? So I found out there's another, I think it's called pseudo class .button, and I actually had to put this above hover to make it work. I can't remember. It might just work. You can play around with it. .button focus. It's a pseudo class called focus. And if you type in outline 0, I had to do some Googling for this one. Save. And when you click, now the background, that square blue box we were seeing is gone, and it looks a little bit better in my opinion. Yeah, so now we got to make the button work. That's the last thing, right? Everything looks good when we refresh. Also, notice the button changed, and it does this really weird thing. And I found that I could fix that with JavaScript, and I'll show you how I do that in just a second. But the button gets glitchy for some reason. I'm calling it glitchy. It's a bug. I don't know why it does that, and I don't really understand why it does that, but I did find out how to fix it, and this is how I fixed it, right? So let's actually, that bothers me so much. So let's fix the button, and then we'll make it work with clicks. Okay, so underneath the switch statement, so we're down at the very bottom of our JavaScript file. I'm just going to type in here start. Oh no, not start. I'm just going to type in keeps button background consistent. Whoa, hello. Consistent. There we go. And how I did this was I added some event listeners to the button. Also, that being said, before we add event listeners to the button, we have to get the button tag from the HTML. So let button, not in caps, let button equal document dot query selector dot button. Okay, and I'm just gonna make sure that works before I go to all this trouble. I'm gonna console.log button and make sure that tag appears in the, there it is, in the console, and it does. So I can get rid of the console.log, save, and then I'm gonna go, okay, and there's Magneton. That's talking about how he comes up with Steel Pokemon. I don't think Steel was a option in version 1, but you know, let me know if that's true or not in the comments below. Can't remember. All right, so we want to keep that background button consistent, right? We don't want it doing that changing to the, see if we can get it to work. Yeah, there it is, and it got really weird there. And the way to change all this and make this fix itself for me was this. So you know, do what works for you, but this worked for me. Button.add event listener. I'm listening for a click, and the second parameter is a function. And what I said was button.style.background image equals. So every time you click on the button, all I said was, hey, I want this background image, and you actually have to wrap this in quotes. I'm going to copy paste it, but again, this is in the description. This is the darker version, I believe, of the image. Let me check. Let's check on that. Yeah, this is the darker version of the image button. So every time you click, it'll change the background image of the button. Every time you click, it'll change the background image of the button to this URL. So it keeps it consistent, right? Whenever it's doing this gray thing, which it may stop now that we've added that, but nope. What I also had to do is add 2 more event listeners to really make it consistent and keep the button the way I wanted it. So button.add event listener, same thing except it's mouse enter. And this is just like make sure mouse enter has no caps. This is all backup in case for some reason it does the glitch thing. We don't want it to do the glitch thing, right? And after all this, it doesn't do the glitch thing, I promise. But for some reason, all this was necessary for me. Button.style.background image, not background, background image equals, and now this is the lighter version. So mouse enter, not only on hover, but on mouse enter, we want the background image to be light. So this is just double reassurance that, I don't want to copy that whole thing. You can't see what I'm doing right now. I'm copying the light image. So you can do that from your CSS. Make sure the whole thing gets wrapped in quotes. The URL gets wrapped in, so the URL is in single quotes, and then this is double quotes around the entire URL. It's just the way JavaScript does that. So that helped with the consistency, because every time you enter, it changes to the light image. It should do that on hover, but This, for me, this was backup. It adds a little bit extra weight probably to the program that isn't necessary, but I'd rather it be consistent and not glitchy with a little extra weight than a crappy product. So if it takes an extra 10 milliseconds to load, that's okay with me. I'd rather have it take an extra 10 milliseconds than be glitchy and people say, hey, this doesn't work right, this is kind of crappy. So same thing, button.style. You could really just copy paste all these background image equals, and again on mouse leave, so when your mouse leaves the button, it goes back to this darker version of the image, and that's a lot of precautions to make sure that that button image stays the way we want it, but it worked for me. So and it stopped the glitching, and we don't want it to glitch. So okay, and it didn't stop the glitching here yet, but you'll see that it will in a minute. So all that and say, hey, no, you know what, that doesn't work, but I promise it will in just a minute. Hopefully. We'll find out. So last thing we need to do is make it so when you click that button that it changes this, right? So when you click the button, this should change to a new Pokemon. So let's go back up to the top of our HTML. And really, this is a matter of taking the XML HTTP request, the API request, and wrapping it in a click event. So let's do that. Button dot add event listener on click, run the function. Oh boy, okay. Run a function that does the API request. So on click, run the API request. Not sure why that's there. There we go. Add event listener, click. On click, get a new Pokemon, and then on load, run this function, which is down here, and it does all of this. And changes the background and the type and all that stuff and the name. Let's save it. New Pokemon. Hopefully now the button stays consistent. Okay, I think the button goes inconsistent when you refresh. If you just continually refresh, I think, no, button works now. Okay, so again, I tinkered around with the add event listeners down here to make that button stay consistent, and it does work. It's a little weird. If you have knowledge of this and why that was inconsistent, let me know in the comments, please, so that viewers and myself can kind of skip that step of adding consistency to the button like that. Last thing we need to, was that the last thing? No. Last thing we need to do is add, right, when you refresh the page, there's no background image. Now we need that background image. So let's go back to CSS and uncomment the background image, and we've got it. So now we refresh, we have that image. Click on new Pokemon, get a new Pokemon with name, type, images of normal, and shiny. And again, if you expand this, hopefully, there we go. If you expand this, it changes the image, and this does look good in mobile. Also, if you're worried about, hey, this isn't going to look good on someone's phone, okay, that responsive is smashed too much, but it's pushed too far together. But if you go to like Galaxy S5, which is the smallest screen width I can think of, 360, it works, and it works pretty nicely, right? Looks good. Click on new Pokemon. You can check it on all kinds of stuff, right? All different iPad, desktop. You've seen it on desktop, right? So iPhone, if you have the new iPhone, looks pretty good on the new iPhone too. Okay, that's it. I believe that's everything. Let's click out of there. Let's check our original. Yeah, and it looks very similar, if not the same, to our original. We used an API. We took the data and we took out the name from the data. We parsed the data coming back from the API. We got the name of the Pokemon, the type, and the images, and we made it randomized so that it creates a new random Pokemon every time from the first generation when we make a call to the API. So I hope you liked this video. I hope you liked building this app. If you did, please subscribe, like, comment. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.